Welcome to another installment of HAC TV. I'm so excited you decided to join us tonight. HAC TV is how the Haitian American Caucus is still bringing you the members of our community vital information and resources. The Haitian American Caucus is a global community development nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide Haitian communities around the world with access to information and resources that will foster self-development and success. My name is Rashidi Denson. I will be your host tonight as we now go into the second part of Language of Scars. We want to also thank our partner, Flatbush Development Corporation, also coined as FDC, to kick off this series. We are so grateful for them. As now we go into our program tonight, The Language of Scars, we have some dynamic speakers and those who have conquered their fears, who have conquered abuse, and they've moved on to the place of healing others. We are so excited tonight that we get to separate the difference between shame and ashamed. And as I get ready to bring in my first guest, Jasmine Marshall, I am so excited about allowing her to join me on this platform.
Thank you so much, Rashidi. It's really good to be here. My name is Jasmine Marshall. I am a domestic violence survivor as well as a domestic violence awareness advocate. I also founded my organization, which is a nonprofit that brings awareness into the New York City communities called WOW Plus Co. And I am so happy that I'm here to share more information and bring this story to light with all of you on tonight.
Well, Jasmine, listen, I am so excited about you being here tonight because we understand that when we talk about a topic like this, it's really silent in our communities. And the individuals who are going through it is silence. So what we want to accomplish tonight is let them know that individuals such as yourself have become to the place of conquering it, where you're willing to share your story and empower them to know that they can move on, that they can get out of that situation. So Jasmine, real quickly, give us a little background of how you got into this and how did it get started?
Okay, well, going back a couple of years, I was in a really messy DV situation without me even knowing that I was in that mess. And I was actually pregnant when I discovered what domestic violence actually was. And that was my wake-up call that I wanted to make changes in my life. And part of my healing process was wanting to tell my story and letting other people know exactly what domestic violence is, because there is a huge shadow around it. It's a lot of gray areas. People just think that if you have a black eye, that's domestic violence. A lot of it is what is hidden. It's the verbal and the emotional abuse that don't leave the scars that you still have to live with for a very, very long time. And that is a long process to heal in that as well. And as I started to open up and decide to share my story, I started to put on forums, and my husband now, he even was helping me. He was like, you've got to do this. This is what you want to do. We incorporated a lot of performing arts as well, because we know that it can be a very touchy and personal subject for a lot of people. So performing arts that make you feel good, that would tie into people telling their stories and being able to share in that moment. And also we put on and produced a play. We worked with a wonderful team of writers, and we were able to premiere it in 2019 at St. John's University. So that's kind of where I am right now. I am really on fire for trying to make sure that our communities right here in New York City understand what domestic violence is, and let people know that they don't have to live in that, and that there is a community of support for them, and that there is a healing process that they will have to go through to make sure that they conquer this thing, this disease that many people are unaware of.
Wow, I tell you, you have enlightened us tonight, and you're doing some awesome things.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a question, Jasmine. As we dive into this conversation and as we start to dialogue, can you talk to me a little bit about what do you think the difference of someone being ashamed and someone being ashamed?
Okay. Well, to get into it technically, shame is a noun, it's a thing. It's like disgrace, it's a loss of disrespect. And a lot of people associate domestic violence with that shame, that because you're a survivor or because you're an overcomer, there's almost like or a victim of it, there's almost like a shame or a title that people want to put over you, but you don't have to live in that. That is what the abuser puts on you. The ashamed part, being ashamed, is the guilty piece. That's an emotion. That's what you're putting on. That's what you're feeling. That's what you're acclimating yourself to. So when you become ashamed of being the victim or ashamed of whatever it is that you're going through in that moment of domestic violence, you're not putting that cloth on, you're becoming that. So I think that's where there's a difference. There's the thing, which can be a title, and then there's the feeling, or then which becomes a persona that you put on that kind of shuts you in, shuts you away from everything else, and it kind of imprisons you from not being able to share and living in the liberty that you're supposed to live in.
Absolutely. So let's dive into a little bit of your story. So when we talk about shame, did you have that experience as you started to become aware of being in that situation of abuse?
I honestly did not feel the shame, even though I had a lot of family members that when they learned of my story, when I was able to begin to speak about it and I understood what was going on, I had some family members that made some insensitive comments that were not as supportive. And that's, again, because a lot of people do not understand what domestic violence is. I look amazing. Yes, I have makeup on. Yes, I carry myself very well. But they were unaware that deep down inside, there is a lot of demons that I'm still fighting. There's a lot of things that I'm still trying to navigate through, because domestic violence is that messy. It is that deep, and you can get so caught up in it and not even know at the time. So for me and my story, again, I was, a young woman, single, dating someone for a couple of years, and I was going back and forth with them, not realizing that it was a lot of toxic behavior that they were exhibiting. And then it doesn't start off right away with a punch. It doesn't start off right away with a kick. It starts off with little things like making sideways comments about how you look, making comments about your friends or your family, and little by little trying to separate you from that support system that you have in place, to the point where you realize that you're actually isolated. So now this person has more control to feed into you. And as we know, life and death is in the power of the tongue. Words have so much life. So if someone is constantly highlighting what's wrong with you, highlighting that, that you're a bad person, or everything that's going wrong is your fault, eventually you're conditioned to believe that. And then once they have that hold on you, or you start to believe that, okay, maybe this is not me, and the gaslighting happens, and you start to question, is that really me? Things begin to escalate. Once they start to feel like that pull or that hold that they have on you is no longer working, things go up another level. And again, this was become a norm for me. I actually was in therapy, and I was talking about my significant other in the most wonderful way, because I was in love with them at the time. And my therapist was just like, hey, do you know what domestic violence is? When you go home, I think you should just put the word in Google and do your research on it. And I did my research on it, and I was completely blown away that this is what I had been living for several years. And it took a while for me to digest that and then make the separation. It was very, very challenging for me.
Wow. Now, you just made a statement. You said that you was already connected to a therapist. Now, last week when we kicked off this segment, we had another guest on, Dr. Jasmine Marshall, and she stated that if she was not connected to her college, she found out that in her college they did an event where they actually talked about domestic violence. And she said it wasn't until she heard the word, she saw the resources, she didn't even know that she was in it. She had no clue, because in her mind, she said that it was just normal behavior. at the time. And so as you start to repeat the same thing in your language and what you're saying right now in your story, go back to how did you end up in therapy? And then through therapy, you found out that you was in a DV situation.
Sure. So at the time, again, I was a young woman. I finished college. I had a really good job. I had just purchased my first home, and my grandmother, for a little while I was making all these really wonderful moves and transitions, was like, I think you should go to therapy. You're in a better place. You should get your life together. Make sure that these transitions and these changes that are going on, that you're able to handle it. And I was like, whatever. And she didn't know anything about the person that I was dating. A lot of my family didn't know who I was with. And I was just like, you know what, let me just do it. So I went. And, the first couple of times it's like a date. When you first meet your therapist, you're just kind of feeling each other out. You're only giving a little bit of information, but I kept with it. And several months in, I realized, wow, this is getting a little heavy. And when she mentioned domestic violence to me, I was just blown away. I was just like, what is she talking about? I said nothing about abuse. I said nothing about a fight. I said nothing at all to her. But yet my behaviors, the way I carried myself, she was able to pinpoint, she was able to pick up that something was off. And again, we normalize that because it's part of your everyday routine. It becomes part of your everyday system. And I grew up in a house where I watched this go on, not realizing that is what was going on in front of me. There was no detailed conversation when I became adult about that and what happens when you find yourself in that situation when you're in intimate partner relationships. It was more so when you were a kid, hey, this is what's going on, this is what happened, and you go to therapy, but you're a kid, so you're still trying to put the pieces together, and that was the end of it. So as an adult, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. I had no idea that this was a cycle. I had no idea. It's like almost like a generational curse. You carry it on from one generation to the next. So this is why I'm so passionate about talking about it now, because the cycle has to stop with me. I have children. And I want to make sure that people are aware that therapy is okay. Because in our community, a lot, we don't like to talk about therapy. Some people, it's taboo. I don't need help. I don't need anybody to tell me what's wrong with me. Life will tell me that, or, oh, I know already, or I'll figure it out as I go. Sometimes it's too late, especially when we're talking about domestic violence. 1 minute, 1 month later, it may be too late. You're playing with your life. So I'm very grateful that even though I didn't go to therapy for that particular thing, and I was just going to go because I was putting my pieces of my life together and transitioning from an adolescent to an adult, that yes. I'm glad I took those steps, because that was the eye opener for me.
Right. Wow. So I'm listening to you, and it just made me think about, before we bring on our next guest, it made me think about I call it the carpet syndrome. So, back in the days, if you had carpet in your house, that was amazing, right? If you had carpet going all through your house, your apartment. And so we had got to a point where what happened was we got away from appreciating hardwood floors. So walk with me a little bit. So now we in a generation, hardwood floors started to be pulled up, maybe around the 2000s or whatever. People started pulling them up and started exposing and seeing the natural beauty of the houses, especially if you're in New York City and you deal with brownstones. Right. And so you started to look at these brownstones and limestones, and when you pulled up the carpet, you realized that the vacuum cleaner that you thought was pulling up all of the dirt and the particles, the vacuum cleaner actually was pushing it deeper into the fibers of the carpet. So all that nice, smelly, fresh powder that you was shaking down on the carpet, it wasn't really picking it up. It was pushing it deeper to the point where you couldn't see it. It was pushing it where it was hitting. And because it was hitting, you couldn't see it. The only people that knew it was around was people who had respiratory issues and asthma. So when they would come around, their respiratory issues would start to act up. And what we realized was that in order for you really to find out what's under the carpet, you had to not only pull it up, you had to rip it up, and you had to get rid of it in order to see the dude that was placed at the bottom of it. So as I listened to your story and you went back into family ideologies and cultural aspects, and you said, I was growing up in it and didn't even know it was there. So it was being pushed down, and some people never talked about it because it was covered under the term normality. And it wasn't normal. And as you started to go through it and you connected yourself to the therapist and resources, you realize that now you can define it. You can put a definition to it. And we just so excited. I'm going to bring a second guest, and then we're going to continue the dialogue, Jasmine. Don't go anywhere because your story is so powerful.
Thank you, Rashidi.
Let's bring in, yes, no problem. Let's bring in Venus Hernandez.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening, Venus. It is so good to see you, Venus. We are so excited that you joined us tonight in the Language of Scars. We know that it's not easy to share your story, but you and Jasmine has taken a step forward. Matter of fact, I'm going to say a step upward, because if you step forward, somebody may catch you. But if you step upward, you go into rare air and they can't catch you. So y'all decided to own your story tonight. So Venus, one thing that a lot of people don't know is that me and your history go back a little bit. And I'm so excited to have you on this platform. You are a licensed massage therapist. You are in the wellness field, and you're always doing things to help people heal. Talk to the viewers and the listeners. Give them a little credibility about who Venus Hernandez is.
Oh, Venus Hernandez. This is a long story, but I am here. I'll work backwards. I guess I'll work backwards. That sounds good. I'm currently working as an acupuncturist. Oh, not working, but I'm studying for my master's in acupuncture. So I'm at Oriental. I've been there for 3 semesters so far. I'll backtrack. I was at Swedish Institute. I chose to be an LMT because I was working as a teacher for many years for the DOE. I did 13 years in DOE. At some point, I grew kind of weary. I enjoyed being with the kids. I love being with the kids. But at some point, I hit a wall where I was really disheartened. I was waking up depressed. I didn't want to go to work. Mm-hmm. The calling didn't feel like it was there any longer. So I was encouraged by my brother to sit on it, just sit on it, pray a little bit. And sure enough, I prayed and I got some clear answers to hop into massage. I've been doing that for about 5 years now, I guess, or maybe 4 since I've graduated. Yes. And my history that kind of brought me to the healing was probably just a little bit of what I was going through, searching for the healing myself. I guess it drove me to want to heal others somehow. I didn't realize I was healing my students until I kind of became a massage therapist where I viewed healing a little differently. So I got into it because I have a lot of history of trauma. I have a history of trauma. My family has a history of a lot of trauma. And I wanted to find ways to help other people recover, even if it wasn't exactly myself in that moment.
It is so amazing that with all the trauma and the things that you and Jack have been through, that you decided to step out and say, I understand that I was put on earth to heal others. And a lot of times you will find out that it seems as if you go through it so somebody else will have to go in it, right? And so I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to ask you, Jasmine, as you look at Venus right now, and we will get a chance to even dissect her story a little bit. But Jasmine, as you look at Venus right now and you heard a little bit of her background, what question would you ask Venus right now? Because Venus is like, she's going through the healing process and everybody's in different stages. What would you ask Venus right now?
I would ask her, what do you do daily as part of your healing process? Because as you mentioned, you have a history and your family also has a history of trauma. So these are many years that have been built up where you unfortunately had to experience this. So as part of your healing, what are you doing on a daily basis to heal and to make sure that you are overcome and liberated from this disease?
It was never this easy to get to this space where I am now. You know, I did go to therapy the way you went to therapy. Um, I understood that I was in it, so that kind of was a little bit different for me in the fact that I was trying to rescue someone that I felt was broken, as broken as I had been. And since I knew that if I put in work, I could get better, I assumed that if I stuck by someone that was just as broken as me, I would get the same resolve. But in the midst of that, I lost myself, and I was in a hole for a long time. I had to crawl out of the hole because at some point you go through things, and then there might not be people that want to be around for that. No matter they be the closest people to you, you might find yourself alone. And being alone is what brought me closer to God, because I had to ask. I have so many notes that I would write to God in my phone because I knew I was in a situation that I shouldn't have been in, but my heart was keeping me there, right? And so that concept of saying love someone unconditionally, I'm loving someone so unconditionally I forget to love myself. I was lost in that. So it was a long bout. It was a 10-year bout, and having my daughter in the midst of things, that certainly helped me to shift my behaviors even more. But to get out of it, it wasn't even completely honestly until just like kind of recently in the past couple years. And so getting out of the dark space, God was with me in those dark times. And I cried a lot of nights alone, to the point where I learned to be with myself because I knew that I wasn't alone because I had God. So this whole time, you know, you're in pain and you feel like no human is there for you, but you sit in that silence and you're like, wow, I'm really not alone though. And I could feel that presence around me. So in my darkest moments when I was, you know, feeling broken, because I was broken trying to collect pieces, I would go and I would write a note to myself, which was really a note to God, to ask him to rescue me, to come save me. It's almost like I knew what I had to do, but I couldn't do it, you know? Wanting to save someone that I love so much because we have a childhood, you know, we childhood friends, childhood sweethearts. You grow up and you want to save someone, right? But in the midst of that, again, you're loving them so unconditionally that you forget about you. So I had to learn that unconditional love did not mean unconditional tolerance, right? Um, I had to teach myself a lot of things in that dark time before I was brave enough to go get help, right? Because you think you somewhere inside, since you know it's wrong, you feel like you could fix it yourself. Like, I know that this is wrong. So if I just
Right.
do this, I can fix it. But it's not that easy. It's never that easy. You so in deep, you in quicksand, and you down in. Your fingers is out, and there you go, you down. So the struggle to get out of there, that's where I found power. Until this day, I still gratitude is one of my key aspects of how I live my life. Every time I wake up, my daughter says the same thing. Thank you, God, for another beautiful day. We read this grab it from under here, even though I might set up the camera. We read some Psalms every day. She'll read a passage, you know, and just using my story to realize that I don't have to be broken no more. I had to go help myself. I had to I had to get help, and I did. And it was you know, it was a struggle. That was another struggle because I
So
go
you
for help
saying
and
that,
here I am. Yeah.
so you saying that there's a time, and I'm looking at you and Jasmine, there's a time where you try to fill somebody else's crack and you find out that you're cracked.
Oh no, I knew I was cracked before I was helping him.
You
I
knew
knew I
you
was
was cracked.
I knew I was cracked.
You knew
But
you was cracked.
I was trying to piece myself together. And since that was working, the little bit I was doing, I felt like, hey, let me start here's pick up some of your pieces. Let me patch that onto you. But it doesn't work like that. It
And
doesn't
so,
work like that.
so listening to you, Venus, Jasmine said, you know, it became something normal. You know, it was nothing wrong with that. So, Jasmine, as me and you started to dialogue, we talked about how it was almost like the concept of if somebody hit me, I'm going to hit them back. So, as Venus just shared and she talked a little bit, give us a little insight of how that transition happened with you, because you had told me that you ended up becoming somewhat of the aggressor and the abuser.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'll tell on myself. Okay. I will tell on myself because it says with confession, right? Change happens, right? So again, it's a cycle. You become conditioned. You learn that, okay, you're doing this to me. Okay, now I'm going to do it back because you ain't going to take me out this time. You ain't going to black my eye this time. I'm going to get you before you get me. It becomes a survival, like the logic leaves all of that, the training that I had growing up as a young Christian woman, where where Jesus says if they hit you on one side, turn the other cheek, meaning let them do it again. And not to say, because people get that scripture messed up and they say let you get abused. That's not what Jesus is saying. He's saying let them do what they got to do, but you don't resort to what they're doing. And unfortunately, I developed a lot of the toxic behaviors because I did not deal with what the situation was then. And even now, overcoming it and no longer being in an abusive relationship and being married, I know that I have triggers. So if I'm not careful, I am guilty sometimes of when the trigger goes off to respond appropriately, whether it's in an aggressive tone or yelling or sounding really mad or getting in somebody's face, because it's like, wait a minute, you just did something knowingly or unknowingly that sparked something within me that I'm still getting healed from. Because see, again, we have this face. I look very well put together, and I am, but it's almost like when you're a domestic violence survivor or a victim, it's almost like you have moments of post-traumatic distress. You don't know when it's going to happen. All it takes is for a moment for something to happen, an elevated voice, someone brushing you the wrong way, coming up behind you, whatever it may be. And I found myself in that position with my with my child's father, because that's what I learned watching him. And when I did something wrong and he was upset with me, boom, he became the aggressor. And then I was retaliating in that same way. And even now, again, I tell on myself, when I have moments where I'm triggered now, I'm learning, I'm navigating through this situation where it's like, you can't act that way.
But that's
Does it happen all the time? No.
Right. But that's great, Jasmine, because I said that's great because you said that you recognize your triggers where now you're taking responsibility, right? So you're saying it's gonna stop here with me. And so
it has to, because if I don't stop it now, the relationships that are meaningful to me, that are God ordained, deteriorate. One. The other thing is I have children. I have to stop the cycle because they can't learn that. They can't go out into the world or become adults and carry on this behavior. And then they're in a domestic violence situation. It has to stop with me because, like what Venus said and what I said, we have a history of it. Our family has a history of it. So it's important to be cognizant and very aware of what's happening so you can stop the cycle. And it's not an easy process. It's not an easy situation to go through, but it has to be done.
Wow. And so, Venus, as you listen to this, right, we're getting ready to take a commercial break, but we're going to dissect a little bit more into your story. And we're going to do something very unique with Jasmine because I believe that Jasmine have a word for you. I believe that there's something she wants to pour out to you tonight. And when I first met Venus, we always had this connection where I recognized the healing that's on her life. But I truly believe that this is her coming out party. It's time for her to let the world know that she's an overcomer and not an undercomer. So right now we're going to transition over to our commercial and thank all of our donors and sponsors. FDC, take it away. Hi.
Every life has worth beyond measure.
Within each person is a flood of potential.
Waiting to be unleashed.
What if every child,
every woman,
and every man was able to imagine something new,
full of hope,
new dreams, and the ability to choose their own future? A new way of seeing the world,
the community,
themselves.
Pushing past the obstacles that once were. And when the world yells, you cannot.
We will keep whispering, yes, you can. Together we can make a difference.
Together we are stronger.
Able to move mountains and break the chains of poverty.
Haitian American Caucus, strengthening Haiti through
education, health,
feeding programs,
micro enterprise. We are Haiti. We are HAC.
Everyone, we are so excited again to have these wonderful ladies on here tonight that's owning their story. Great evening. Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Great, great. So we just had a little technical difficulty at the end, but we wanted to thank Flatbush Development Corporation, which is also known as FDC, for their contributions and also making sure that we're able to have this forum tonight. As you continue to look on the screen, there will be running information regarding if you're in a domestic violence situation. We want to make sure that we're empowering individuals. If you have a housing situation, we want to make sure that we're empowering our community. So if you look below the screen, you can see all of the information. And of course, Asian American Caucus HAC is here to consistently provide you with the tools that you need in order to be successful. Once again, we have Jasmine with us and we have Venus with us, and they are two ladies who have made it their business to say that their story is going to be told. As we move on into this second segment, we want to get into the fabric. And we'll start with you, Venus. We want to get into the fabric. So, Venus, we heard your story a little bit. You did talk about your background, and we felt your passion. We felt your pain. But really quickly, because Jasmine alluded to triggers, do you find yourself at this point now, because of the things that you've been through, are you able to recognize your triggers or still trying to find them all?
I'll be honest, I probably still am trying to find them all. There are They're all. I think sometimes certain scenarios may force you to realize that something is triggering you, and until you're put in a certain circumstance, you may not realize that that is a trigger. So it's something that I'm still working on, even something as small as keeping my voice to a certain tone and not becoming the aggressor, like Jasmine mentioned. Those are small challenges that I still battle with. Because was I that type of person before? No. But when you have to be on the defense, you almost turn into that. So I'm working on that still, honestly. And like I said, sometimes there are moments where the trigger does arise. But one thing I can say, I am aware to say, oh, hold up. I think I feel this way because sometimes a certain song will come on and I'm triggered. I'm like sitting somewhere bawling, crying. I'm like, what does this have to do with? Does it have to do with this? So I'm trying to analyze all of the triggers from that. And just recently, I'm gonna get back into therapy. I started looking for a provider. So yeah, man, it's a work in progress. Life is a one long journey, and the journey is important, not always the destination. So I'm on the
Well, you
journey still.
said something really powerful earlier. You said that you wrote yourself letters. And so, Jasmine, I know you heard that. How significant that is to write yourself a letter, because we love to toss around this word love. And when you talk about abuse, love now starts to fade out. What we think love is not really what love really is all about. So is it important to write ourselves letters? Is it important to love ourselves, Jasmine?
Absolutely. It's important to love ourselves. And I feel like, and I know that the only way we would learn how to love ourselves is by learning who the creator is, learning who God is, really spending time in his word and in his presence, because he is love and he gives us agape love, unconditional love. So we learn that through him, that all the things that we do wrong, that we don't cross every T and dot every I, yet he still loves us, yet he still provides for us. He wakes us up every morning. He makes sure that we have clothes on our back. And yes, things are not perfect in life, but he didn't promise us rainbows every single day and sunshine. But the fact that he still provides for us all of our needs, that is love. And he doesn't put us in a situation where we're supposed to get abused and tolerate it. And that's where we realize at some point that we strayed away from God. We strayed away from his love and what he tells us love is. So I think it's super important when we talk about self-love that we also talk about God the Father, because he created us and he knew us before he even put us in our mother's womb. So he knew what was going to happen. He knew what trials and testings and tribulations were going to come, yet he still is there for us in the most detrimental times of our life. He said he'll never leave us or forsake us. When my mother and father forsake me, then the Lord will take me up. That's love. That's love, not abandonment, not neglect, not sitting in a situation where it's going to continue to break you down and separate you from God, when he gave us Jesus Christ, his son, who is the connection to him, who is the one who allowed us to be reconciled with love, our God.
Right. And so I'm listening to you, and I've noticed that both brought it back to your faith. And we may have listeners and viewers out there who are like, I hear you. I think that the spiritual piece, the faith piece is great, but I may not believe what you believe. So, in that sense, where do I place my faith? Because I put my faith in people. As you talked about love, Jasmine, love have many different parts, and it seems like we're always trying to get to the arrows, right? Because we want the arrows, right? The arrows,
the fun
love,
one, right?
right? The feel good love, right? And then we want to get to the philo, which is the brotherly love, right? We always talking about those two, how people betrayed us and talked down to us and didn't really show us that. And so, Venus, I'm gonna let you jump into this love conversation a little bit and say, Jasmine said agape love. That's like unconditional love. So how can you experience unconditional love after abuse if you don't have a faith mindset or faith trail? I think you're on mute, Venus.
Oh, sorry. Some people.
It's okay.
Sorry. I think that an easy way out of that is just to say, where is your self-love for yourself? Because once you love yourself, technically you're loving God without even knowing that. So we could get them to see that they just need to love themselves primarily. Self-care, what does that look like? What does that feel like? Um, Pushing and implementing an idea to say, how can I grow as me, the person, right? What kind of goals do I have? What kind of dreams do I have? What are minor things I can set for myself that are realistic for me to accomplish? So I think posing it in a very grid-like way is gonna force anyone to say, you know what, I do want to be a better me. I want my skin to look better, and I want to wake up in the morning feeling good. Maybe I can change my eating habits, or maybe I'll wake up and I'll go for a run. So maybe just implementing some self-love as the answer, and in the midst of that, they're bound to find God.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Now we know that y'all stories have been in motion for a very long time. And we know that a segment of this magnitude, just one segment can't do justice, right? So we definitely look forward to ongoing conversations and having platforms available for y'all to continue to tell y'all story. But I want to do something now. I want to ask Jasmine, if you saw yourself, that young lady who was walking into a situation where she did not know. Now you know the situation, you know the signs, you know the triggers. You're more mature in that area. What would you say to her? What would you say to that young lady or that young man or whoever's listening right now that's about to walk into that situation? What would you like to say to them?
Mm. There is a whole lot that I would like to say. I'd like to let them, I would love to let them, excuse me, I'm tongue tied. I would
So
love to convey to them that they are loved, that there are people there that love them, and that they don't have to subject themselves to a scenario or a situation or a person that is not loving them the way that they deserve to be loved. And it's not that the person that they're with may not love them, because people have this idea that abusers don't love them. People show love in different ways. And we all, at some point in our lives, have toxic traits. And the way that you're being loved or the way this person is exhibiting love is not really what you're supposed to be going through right now. Love is supposed to feel good. It's not supposed to hurt. It's not supposed to feel that way. And the longer you stay in that situation, the longer you lose your identity, your sense of self, your self-worth. And then at that point, it's a lot more harder for you to get out that situation. Like I said before, in my situation, you become conditioned. Somebody starts to strip you of your identity, of your self-worth, of who you are and how you're supposed to be cared for. You'll believe anything and go along with anything that they tell you at that point. So I would like to remind them how important they are, how special they are, how unique they are, how beautiful they are, how much God loves them, and he's created people in their life, whether they realize it or not, that genuinely do love them and care for them. And that they don't have to tolerate or sit in a situation that makes them uncomfortable or dims their light.
wow. I tell you, that was very powerful right there. And the fact of how you started out. Venus, as we ask you this question, when we look at you, we see you, Venus, that you are an ocean, but you're talking to someone who's just they're just a pitcher. So that means they cannot contain and hold as much water as you. They wasn't created with that opportunity to be able to gather that much territory. What would you say to that person who don't have the capacity you have, who are not able to reach the four corners the way you are? What are you saying to that person that's sitting in that room right now and God just designed them to be a pitcher and they have a limitation of a pitcher? What would you say to that young lady or that young man?
I would tell them to think of themselves as a little kid, to see themselves as a child, and ask themselves, would they let a little version of themselves go through that? Are they realistic to sit with an idea that they're being dragged and broken? I like to think of the analogy of a child because when I think of my smaller self, I had to heal my smaller self. And it was looking at my childlike self that made me realize just how broken and how I needed to fix this grown up, but I couldn't do it without fixing the little me first. So my advice to that person will be, take a look at the little you and put little you in the same predicament you in now, and ask yourself, is that really what little you needs? And if it's not what you need, how can you change it to be what a little version of you would really need? What do babies need? What do children need? They need love and they need nurturing. You can't put a kid in an abusive relationship because we know where that's going to go. So you say to yourself, how would you fix little you? And from there, hopefully you'll fix big you.
Wow. And there's a instinct that's in us, right? We children don't come with instructions, right? But there's an instinct in you to just love a baby. And so as you was talking, it just made me think about that. It made me think about that there's something in us that there was something put on the inside of us that we can recognize what genuine love really is. I tell you, y'all have been doing an awesome job on the platforms tonight. As individuals look at y'all, they look at the fact that they may look at y'all as minorities. They may look at y'all not as the majority. Your voice is on this side of the world. It's not over there. But it seems like y'all voices are really strong and it's really heavy. And it's amazing to see that y'all went through so much and yet y'all own y'all story tonight. So many people see your scars, but they don't get to hear the language of the scar. So now we have some questions that's coming through the airwaves. There's some people out there. They seem to be very excited. And it seems like there's a transformation happening with your story. I want to say this, and you can tell me if you don't agree with it. I truly believe that right now, a lot of people want to change themselves, but really they need to just grow up. We need to exchange change for maturity. And it seems like they spend a lot of times trying to change this and change that. And so one of the individuals asked a question, Jasmine. They asked a question about your faith. They said, was that the foundation of where your strength came from? How important is your faith, right? How important is it when it comes to that healing process? So speak to that a little bit, Jasmine. How important is your faith?
It's very important. Like I said, I grew up in as a child, as a young adult, in a strong Christian home. And when I thought I was grown and did my own thing, you deviate, you rebel, like the prodigal son, right? And you find out that it's not fun when you're living with the swine rolling around. But no, my faith was really important to me. And at the time, like Venus has said, there were some people in your life that leave you. People who either know that you're going through it, even though you may not understand that you're going through it, and couldn't see themselves to sit there and watch you go through it, and they walk away. Or some people who just judge you and they're just like, all right, whatever, and they leave you. But I had thank God, again, it's all God, my mother in my ear. And my mother at the time, when I couldn't hear God for myself, my God was using my mother as his voice to me, praying for me until I got to a point where I started to seek him again for myself. And going back again, what Venus says, she talked about being by yourself, being in a dark place. It's so important because even when you're by yourself and you're in a dark place, you forget that so many wonderful things happen in the dark and in silence when everybody is away from you. That's when God is the greatest. Think about a child at conception. You're in the dark when we're in our mother's womb, yet we know someone's carrying us. How like important is that? How insightful is that? Like, it's crazy. Same thing with a seed. You put it into the ground, you bury it. It's dark. You don't hear that seed growing. You don't hear it being germinated. You don't hear it busting through the soil when the time comes. But when that time comes, right? we know that God put you there in that place for a reason, that dark moment for a reason, and he never left. So when we talk about my faith, it is super important to me because I know that in that moment, God was still there, even when I couldn't hear him, even when I couldn't see him, even when I couldn't feel him. And I have to, again, give God all the glory because he gave me certain people in my life, like my mother. And I have another role model that's a mature woman that's spoken to my life, that have been through these things, that were able to tell me, you will live and not die. And again, words are so powerful. And that's why it's important to guard your ears. And it's important that the people that you have around you are going to speak well and speak life into you.
I tell you, Jasmine, I mean, you and Venus is really just really dropping some diamonds tonight. And we realize that through y'all struggle and through y'all overcoming, that's just so many people. I'm looking at the comments and people are just, they're like, wow, this is healing for them tonight. On a Friday night, people may not have thought to sit down and listen to this. And so plugging into your community, plugging into your resources and understanding to become a resourcefulness within yourself and knowing that there is help out there for you. Venus, as we pick up and we come towards the last leg of our segment here, you're a licensed massage therapist. You get the great opportunity of touching others, feeling their pain, and helping them alleviate it. You actually rid it. Now, me and you came in contact because of massage therapy, right? And I tell you, the first time that I met you, I got the opportunity to guide you and lead you in your business and your career. And it was just an amazing opportunity. You're a wellness professional. You have to embody and feel people's pain. How do you carry what you came out of and then have to touch people and carry their pain also? What do you do to self-care for Venus?
To be honest with you, I almost view myself as a tool. So not so much when I work, I don't really try to envision myself taking in their pain and then having to transmute that. I almost work in a mind state that is actively transmuting. I'm working. So I give a lot of my work to God. I pray before I work. And I never tell my clients this because, you know, some people may feel uncomfortable and that's why it's private. I'm allowed to do that in myself, in my mind. So I make sure I pray. I ask God to use me because ultimately I learned through just my acupuncture, my essay I did. I learned that I am not really the healer. I learned that. That's egotistical for me to think that I'm the healer. I'm not really the healer. The person is the healer.
I tell you,
capability to heal already. It's just
Now, we know with some technical difficulties, but I tell you, if you heard the language in that, the last statement I heard Venus make was, she said, how egotistical could you be to think that you're the healer?
Mm.
You're not the healer.
Mm.
So speak to that, Jasmine, because you really uncovered some stuff tonight. You put yourself out there, women of worth. I would be amiss if I don't give you an opportunity. What does women of worth stand for, and what are you looking to do in the future?
Right. So WOW Plus Co stands for exactly that, Women of Worth and Company. It's not just enough to pour into women. As I had the opportunity to speak to you a couple of days ago, we were having a conversation and I talked about a forum that I had about 3 years ago where I had an all-male panel who spoke about domestic violence. And it was just so profound and heavy how they each had a story about their experiences with domestic violence. So we can't cancel out the men. It's not like they don't have a story. It's not like, you know, they're the only ones that are they're the abusers. No, they can be victims too. So what I do in my organization is we like to do forums. We like to have open dialogue and conversations and panels about things like this and be able to put it into perspective. We like to share this with the community. We like performing arts because, again, it's a lot. It's a heavy room. It's a heavy heart that people are carrying. A lot of people are even afraid to come to things like this because they don't want to walk out feeling the baggage. They don't want to walk out thinking, oh my gosh, like I'm so heavy and I want to cry. So we do try to make sure that we incorporate things in there that's going to make you feel good, but still give you the information that's necessary so that even if you're not the one that's going through domestic violence, you have the ability to identify it and be support for someone else. Because that is what people who are going through domestic violence need. They need at least one. If one person would believe them, if one person would just say, I got you, if one person would just hold their hand, that means so much more than the judgment or the absence of support. So that's what we want to be able to put out there in New York City, Brooklyn, Queens. Like that's really what it's about. We're trying to go to the Bronx. I'm trying to team up with another organization in the Bronx.
Let me stop you right there, Jasmine. You're not trying, you're doing it.
I'm doing.
You are doing it, and your team is doing it. And we thank you so much for this platform. Can you just tell the viewers and the listeners, how can they stay in touch with you? I mean, somebody may connect with you tonight and they say, I need to know that Lady Jasmine. I really need to connect with her.
So you can email me or email us at wowplusco@gmail.com. That's wowplusco, so WOWPLUSCO@gmail.com. It should be showing up on the screen. Or you can hit us up on Instagram. We have a page on Instagram as well. Same thing, wowplusco. And we will be sure to reach out to you with any questions or comments that you may have. And we'll be posting some events that we'll be doing in the near future.
Wow, we're so excited that Jasmine took time out tonight to just join us. And also Venus. We know Venus has some technical difficulties, but you can reach out to HAC if you want to stay in touch with Venus or get in touch with her. She is a licensed massage therapist and she's studying to be an acupuncturist. So Venus is definitely doing her due diligence to expand her territory in the wellness field. I am so excited for her life. As we make this turn and this transition to close up, just remember now that this is a 3-part series. We will be back next Friday at 7 o'clock. You don't want to miss it. The Language of Scars is here to give people a platform and an opportunity to own their story. We don't want nobody else telling your story. We want you to tell your story. I'm reminded by a song, and I don't know if it's a song and it also goes into a poem, but it talks about, I hope in life, I hope you dance. I hope whatever you go through, that you get up and you get a choice to sit it out. I hope you get on the dance floor and you dance. You only get one shot at life. It's not a dress rehearsal. This is real. If you are out there and you heard us, please look at the information at the bottom. If you are going through a situation, Haitian American Caucus HAC is here to help you connect to those resources. The FTC is here to help you connect to those resources in your community. We are so excited that you tuned in tonight, and we hope that you follow us again next week. Again, The Language of Scars, Part 3. You don't want to miss it. Jasmine, we thank you so much for coming on tonight. Venus, we thank you so much for coming on tonight. And please make sure, I'm sorry, Jasmine, please make sure that with HAC, that you partner with HAC, that you get in touch with HAC, and that you become a donor of HAC, because this is a global community right at your doorstep. Thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you so much, Rashidi. Appreciate it.
No problem. And Venus, we love you. We love you. You can hear us. We know that you had some technical difficulties, but we heard your story.
We love you, Venus, and we encourage you to keep going.
Keep going. Keep going. Thank you so much, viewers and listeners, tonight. Once again, from the Haitian American Caucus, we thank you so much. And from our partner, the FDC, Flatbush Development Corporation, we thank you for tuning in to The Language of Scars, part 2. See us next week for part 3. You don't want to miss it. Take care.